Welcome to episode 12 of Escape the Rat Race Radio. I'm your host, Christian Rodwell, and this is your ticket to escape the 9 to 5.
I felt this profound sense of, that there was so much more to life than just sitting behind this desk. And I realized in that moment I could do something different. There was no hiding anymore. It was there. I had felt this feeling of freedom. That really was the moment. Once you have that epiphany, there's no turning back. To try and inspire people to realize that kindness is not necessarily going around the world in a yellow motorbike. Kindness is not necessarily giving £50 a month to the Red Cross. It's great, don't get me wrong, those are good things. But kindness, compassion and empathy is all about how you show up in the world on a moment-to-moment basis.
On this week's episode of Escape the Rat Race Radio, I have invited global adventurer, motivational speaker and philanthropist, Mr. Leon Logothetis. You may recognise Leon from his very popular series that's currently airing on Netflix called The Kindness Diaries, where Leon travels around the globe in his yellow motorcycle, fondly known as Kindness One, purely relying on the kindness of strangers. Now, we often interview very successful entrepreneurs and members of Escape the Rat Race who have made that leap from employee to entrepreneur. However, Leon has a slightly different perspective on things because for Leon, the material things in life are not what drives him. What drives Leon is really giving back. And he has found a way to monetize his passion of traveling the world, being a philanthropist. And I asked Leon the questions of how can someone leave their job in the 9 to 5 and actually go out there and what we think is a secure job, leave that behind and actually go and have a successful life, one that's very fulfilling and full of purpose. So during this interview, you'll find out that Leon's belief is really that anything you dream of is possible and where his love of personal development really came from. And Leon actually used to be a stockbroker in London and he felt that he had all of the material things from the outside, but actually on the inside was really lacking a real purpose. And he just gave it all in, traveled to Los Angeles and began this adventure. So you're going to hear all about this story from Leon. I know you're going to be super inspired listening to this. So let's not waste any time. Let's head over to the interview now with Mr. Leon Logothetis. Welcome to the show, Leon. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm currently in Los Angeles.
Okay, so you're at home. Are you in between travels at the moment?
Yes, I'm actually getting ready to do a speaking tour starting on Monday.
Brilliant. And that's in America, is it? Yeah.
Yes, in America.
Cool. So, Leon, those listening probably have already picked up that actually you're not American. You have a somewhat English accent. So what takes you out to Los Angeles?
I used to be a broker in the city of London. I grew up in London and I found myself to be pretty disconnected, pretty depressed, no real sense of purpose. Lost, really, inside, lost. And on the outside, I had what I needed. On the inside, I had nothing. I stumbled across the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, which is a romanticized version of Che Guevara, traveling across South America, relying on the kindness of strangers. And there was something about that movie that really touched me in a profound way. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live behind this desk anymore. Even though I had what I needed materialistically, I didn't have anything emotionally or spiritually. I found the courage to quit my job. I actually I did a journey where I walked across America relying on kindness and I ended up living in LA. So anyway, that was like a long version of how I ended up in LA.
And how long ago was that?
It was about a decade ago.
Obviously, we've all come to grow and love what you're doing now with the Kindness Diaries, which myself and my girlfriend Laura have just been, every night sat on the sofa, soaking that up. And it's obviously touched so many people across so many places. So you've said that it began with a journey across America. And I know that you've written, obviously, a book, Live, Love and Explore. You've been on this mission now for some time. And what was it when you were in your job in London that actually the final decision made you say, enough's enough? Was there one particular point or one moment you can look back to where you just said, that's it, I've had enough?
Yeah, I mean, the moment was basically after watching that movie, because I watched the movie and I felt this profound sense of, that there was so much more to life than just sitting behind this desk. And I realized in that moment I could do something different. However hard it would be for me to do it, there was no hiding anymore. It was there. I had felt this feeling of freedom. That really was the moment. It didn't happen immediately after that. It took a little bit of time. But once you have that epiphany, there's no turning back.
I think there's many listeners probably now who maybe are, sat on a bus or listening in the car. They're on their way to work and they're really going through the motions, that kind of daily grind of just turning up, working for someone else and getting paid at the end of the month and just going on and on in that cycle. And we talk so often about following your passion, doing something that has great meaning and great purpose. But for some people, they really struggle with that, to actually put their finger on what is it that if money was no object, you'd spend every day doing? I mean, do you come across people who struggle with that question? And do you have any advice or ways of helping them to really pinpoint their passion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it's also something that many of us have to deal with, is this issue of what's my true passion? What's my true purpose? And sometimes I would say to look back at what you were inspired by as a kid before you had to, have all these responsibilities piled onto you. What really inspired you as a child? What did you do whereby hours went by as if they were minutes? And the answer is, more often than not, can be found there. That's really the first thing, to kind of figure out what your big dream is, because many of us have forgotten it. We've got mortgages to pay, we've got kids to look after, we've got jobs to go to, and we've forgotten what really makes our hearts sing. So look back at what you really enjoyed doing as a kid, and there's a treasure map there.
I guess it's kind of crossing over what you're good at. So actually looking at what your natural skills and strengths are and crossing that over with actually what you really enjoy doing, and then making sure that there is actually a need as well out there. Because a lot of people will say, well, how do I monetize my passion? That's another question. I guess when you started out, was that something that you thought about? Because you've now managed to create a business around this and obviously lots of intellectual property. Was that there at the beginning for you?
Look, when I quit the job as a broker, I was fortunate. I still had means. Yeah, I still had a way of making my dreams come true, because I'd worked for all these years. But at the end of the day, I still had to go back and work as I opened up a production company in LA, and kind of did TV. So I understand very clearly how sometimes we can think to ourselves that our passion is it's difficult to monetize. It's also difficult to, if you can't monetize a passion, then how are you going to feed your family? I get it. But you can take small steps. It doesn't have to be one giant leap. It can be small steps. Let's say, for example, you want to be a baker, but you can't just quit your job. Well, you can start off by going to the library and reading a book, Baking for Dummies. I don't know if there is a Baking for Dummies, but you get my point. And you can read that for a couple of weeks. And then the next step is you can take another step out of your comfort zone and maybe get a book on how to set up your own business, all whilst you are still working. So you can do it. It's possible. If you have the commitment and you have the drive to change your life, it can be done. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. That's why many of us don't do it, but it's not impossible.
That reminds me of an interview we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago from James Sinclair, and he was saying that it's the hunger. That's the important part. When you're hungry enough for something, when you've really kind of touched on that thing that's important to you, when the why is strong enough, the how takes care of itself. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, look, history is filled with people that had nothing and went out into the world with a commitment and a hunger and made something of themselves. So it's possible. It's not easy, but it's possible.
And I guess this really epitomizes the journey that you took through the Kindness Diaries. And you traveled across America, which is, a task in itself to begin with, on the wonderful Kindness One. And I do send our regards to Kindness and hope all is well there. And once, obviously, you traveled across America, you then crossed Europe to Asia, and you must have come across entrepreneurship, but in different shapes and forms, because we talk a lot at Escape the Rat Race about how can you create a business, how can you generate, obviously, money from things that you're passionate about, enterprises, assets. However, you've gone out there and actually realized that before all of that, the simple basic needs, psychological needs, just things like safety and just having relationships is actually so important in the bigger picture of things, isn't it?
It's critical. Some people say they are self-made millionaires or self-made people, and I would disagree with that. I would say there's always something that someone that has been there to help. Maybe you made it by yourself financially, but there was a mother who guided you, or someone. And it's so very important to not just look at success from a perspective of finances, but success from the perspective of how you inspire people in your life and how you live your life, and how much compassion and kindness and empathy you show to yourself and you show to others.
That's right. It's fair to say in every, story that was part of the Kindness Diaries, it wasn't material things necessarily that people were looking for. It was the connection. It was the acts of kindness, obviously, at the end of the day, which really made the difference to these people. And they could then, it gave them the ability to pass on that kindness then in their own way as well.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted the gifts not necessarily to be financial. The gifts obviously cost money, but it wasn't money that I was giving people. It was the opportunity to go out and make the best of their lives, the opportunity to feel that someone was showing them compassion and someone saw them and someone cared about them. That's where the true change takes place, because you never forget that. It stays with you. Even if you have bad days, you can always look back and think, okay, I had this moment of magic where I felt connected, where I felt seen, and it never goes away.
Let's roll it back to where that began on the Kindness Diaries. So you were at the gas station, and it was the very first act of kindness. Would you mind sharing that experience with us?
Yeah, sure. So I started the journey in Hollywood, and I needed to find the first tank of gas. So I walked down to Hollywood Boulevard. Most people said no, which is fine. Of course, they don't know me and they have every right to say no. Some people tried to give me money. I couldn't accept money. But there was one chap who I found myself at a gas station. I sat outside a gas station. I told him what I was doing, and he said, "Look, man, I will fill up your tank." And that's what he did. He filled up my tank and got me half the way to Las Vegas.
He sure did. And then how long was it until you had the opportunity to go and revisit him again at the end of your journey?
The whole journey took about 5.5 months. I guess it was 5.5 months later. 5.5 months.
And was he there that when you tried to return that first, after the trip, was he there, or did it take a couple of times until you could find him again?
Well, have you watched the whole show? Have you watched up to episode 13?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, well, at the end of episode 13, I don't want to tell your listeners the surprise, but there's a surprise for everyone at the end of 13.
With him, yeah, when you sit down with him. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. So when you went back to obviously, have that chat with him at the end, that was just such a beautiful moment. And it really kind of closed the loop on the whole, kindness journey, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He'd started it. It was great to finish it with him.
Most definitely.
And I still stay in touch with him. Dwight, he's a good man.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So as a result of obviously taking this journey and releasing the book now as well, how has this inspired you to now move on and reach out in more, greater ways? And what's now, your mission as a result of having done that journey?
It's inspired me in many ways, but the most profound way is simply to try and inspire people to realize that kindness is not necessarily going around the world in a yellow motorbike. Kindness is not necessarily giving £50 a month or £10 a month to the Red Cross. It's great, don't get me wrong, those are good things. But kindness, compassion, and empathy is all about how you show up in the world on a moment-to-moment basis, and how you can change lives, including your own, on a moment-to-moment basis. Again, that doesn't mean, that we don't, each of us have trauma that happened in our childhoods and happened in our lives that stop us from going out into the world and doing this kind of stuff. But if you can find your way through that by sharing your pain and by sharing with people, then the byproduct of that is that you get more connected to your heart. And when you get more connected to your heart, you want to spread it to as many people as you possibly can.
Who would you say has, helped you? I'm sure many people have helped you along this journey. Are there any people in particular that have been there to really support you along the way?
Do you mean when I was doing the Kindness Diaries or generally in my life?
In the last 10 years, since you really made that big, bold leap to just leave the rat race behind, that's a tough decision for people to make. And sometimes, sometimes even your closest friends and family don't get you. I find many people in Escape the Rat Race community, they feel a little bit isolated when they discover the kind of personal development and growth, and they really just want to go out and achieve great things in the world. But friends and family are like, oh, you're a dreamer, you can't do that. And did you have someone that supported you, or how did you deal with that?
When I was 15, 16, I had a after-school teacher. She would always tell me, I wasn't very good at school, by the way. I would never listen. I would always be sitting there trying to daydream about Liverpool winning the Premier League, which never happened. Hasn't happened since yet. I didn't believe in myself, and she would always tell me, I believe in you. And for many years, she would do the same thing. And when I didn't believe in myself, I would always think back to what she said to me, because I felt believed in by her. And I share that story because all it takes is one person to believe in you. If you can't believe in yourself, all it takes is that one person to keep telling you that. And then finally, it'll come to a point where you do believe in yourself. So it's so important.
And we talk a lot as well about having a mentor, certainly in terms of self-growth and personal development. And when you're building a business, obviously having someone who's already walked down that path and can help you to avoid the pitfalls and kind of quicken the learning process. Have you had anyone like that in your life at all that's guided you along the way?
Yes, I have. I've had a few. I've spent many moments on the therapist's couch, let me tell you that. And I've had some mentors who've really helped me and really, inspired me to believe in myself and have always been there when I've needed it most. I have not done this by myself by any stretch of the imagination.
I think that's a really important point, isn't it? Is that if you are in that rat race and sat in that job which you're just not enjoying, it's not helping you grow as a person, you don't feel like it's getting the most out of you, you really do need that team of support and people around you, don't you? We talk about having like your entrepreneurial network, but it is so important to surround yourself with supportive people and like-minded people that will help you on that journey.
100%. That's one of the most important things you can do, without a doubt.
Yeah. And have you seen signs of that everywhere that you've traveled as well, in terms of the communities, the villages, the people that you've helped?
Definitely. There's so many things that we should be grateful for in the Western world. Many, many, many wonderful things that we have. Yet there are certain things that we've lost. And one of those things is community. And in some of the poorest places in the world, they're some of the happiest people because they have a sense of community. People help each other. And that's one thing that I feel like we've lost in many respects.
I loved actually your journey through Cambodia, because that's a country that I visited when I was traveling, a few years ago. And despite the hardships and really, really tough times that they've had in not too distant years, they are some of the most happiest, smiliest people that I've ever come across, and I just absolutely loved being there.
Yeah, Cambodia was a special place.
For you, there must have been so many highlights. Are there one or two that particularly stand out in your journey?
Yeah, one of the highlights for sure was Bhutan. So Bhutan is a country northeast of India, and it has this thing called gross national happiness, where they determine the success of the country by the happiness of the people. I don't know the algorithm they use, but I can tell you that Bhutanese people that I met had just such a joy in their hearts. It was beautiful to meet them and to experience them. They were very heart-centered people. That was one of the highlights for sure.
Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur now, Leon? Because we've talked about the books, and you speak now regularly, you're touring, and you're a TV host, you've got so many different aspects going on. Do you consider yourself being an entrepreneur? And, is that, again, what you set out to achieve when you quit the day job?
I'm not sure whether I consider myself to be an entrepreneur, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, I like going out into the world, and I like writing the books, and I like selling the books. And I like doing the TV shows. But my main goal is not necessarily making money. My main goal is to connect with people and to in any small way that I can, enable them to believe in themselves. That's really what I love to do. Don't get me wrong, money is important, and I do make money from what I do, but that's not my main goal. And maybe entrepreneur, the word entrepreneur for me tends to be that money's the most important thing. I could, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe I'd call myself something else, like a conscious entrepreneur.
So certainly, philanthropist as well is clearly part of who you are, and giving back is clearly one of your big values in life.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I know what it feels like to be on the floor emotionally. I want to do my best to inspire people and for them to know that they're not alone.
We ask a couple of fun questions on this podcast, and if you're happy, I'll fire just a couple at you and just get your first answer on these, really. The first one being
daily discipline.
What's the one habit or activity that keeps you focused and on the path every day?
Meditation.
Is there a particular meditation way that you follow? I'm interested to find out about that.
Yeah, basically, I do transcendental meditation. So every day I meditate without fail. I primarily do it at night. I know you're supposed to do it during the morning, but I can't. I haven't been able to discipline myself to do it during the morning. So I do it at night, and I've been doing it for many years. And I just do it every day without fail. Whatever time I may come home, if I come home at 5 a.m., I still do it.
It's so important, isn't it, to kind of have obviously harnessed real good habits in your life. And when you miss those, you really do miss them, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
So the second question in the quickfire round is
rejection recall.
Now, normally I say that every business owner, entrepreneur has experienced bumps in their journey, but I think for our conversation, I'd like to put a twist on this and refer it to the Kindness Diaries. So the biggest challenge that you experienced on your journey, those 5.5 months, was there one point where you just thought, I can't take it any longer?
Yes, many. I remember leaving my house for the first time, and I was like, "What am I doing? This is insane." And to be quite honest with you, that feeling kept on going. Obviously, there were moments of magic and moments that I'm very, very grateful for, and the whole journey I was grateful for. But there were moments when I was like, "This is just insane." I remember I went to Italy. And I arrived in a town. Not a single person spoke English. Now, of course, you can argue you're in Italy. Why would they speak English? But it was just funny. You're in Europe. And I went through this whole town and I couldn't find a single person to speak English. And it was just, that's a kind of humorous thing that happened. But there were border crossings that weren't in the show. They were actually in the book, because obviously we couldn't film the border crossings because there would have been some problems. I'd probably still be in a Cambodian prison cell if I did. There were a lot of moments that were really quite daunting.
We definitely we chuckled in a kind way when you literally had your head in your hands at some points and you just like, oh no, not another night, just me and kindness together.
Exactly. Me and kindness won.
How many nights did you have to spend in the sidecar?
I'd say, I can't remember the exact number, but it was between 10 and 15.
Hopefully it wasn't raining on any of those evenings.
Do you know what? It's really interesting. It only rained once in the entire journey, and that was in Lake Como.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was kind of chasing summer, because everywhere I was going was summer until I got to Vancouver when it became freezing.
I recall that. You nearly had frostbite on your fingers, you said.
Yeah. Literally, my mouth was beginning to like numb up. I couldn't speak.
Oh, wow. So, Leon, we're coming towards the end of our conversation now, and time's gone so quickly. I really love to find out so much more about your journeys and experiences, but I'd love for you to leave us and our listeners with one piece of advice. If someone's listening to this and they really want to kind of start their own business or really achieve the great things that are within them, but something's holding them back, and it might be fear of leaving a secure job or a regular paycheck, some limiting beliefs or something, what would be your piece of advice for someone who's just got something holding them back? What would you say to them right now?
I'd say to them, fast forward your life until you're 90 years old. And when you're sitting back, looking back at everything you did, imagine what you will think when you realize that you didn't live your dreams, when you didn't live your passion, when you didn't go out and live magnificently. You will have no choice at that point because it'll be on the edge of being over. But right now you do have a choice.
So just do it.
Well, that's the Nike way of saying it.
Yeah. I push myself all the time. When there's something and I'm procrastinating, I just say to myself, just do it now. So Leon, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for your gift that you've given everybody through your wonderful acts of kindness, traveling around the world. Would it be okay to give you a massive virtual hug?
Oh, absolutely. I love hugs.
Well, we should do that now before we sign off.
Okay.
And Leon, for anyone that obviously wants to find out more, obviously you're currently in the UK on Netflix. I'm not sure in other countries. Is it kind of available worldwide at the moment?
It's primarily available at this moment in English-speaking countries.
And the book, of course, Kindness Diaries, is available. And how else can people get in touch with you online if they want to connect with you?
Facebook and Twitter. You just Google my name, which is LeonLogothetis, and I'm there.
And for our American listeners, obviously check out the tour dates and get along to one of those.
Absolutely.
And when can we next expect to see you on our screens, Leon?
Well, we're working on a season 2, so it'll be either the end of this year or early next year.
I can't wait. I really can't wait for that. So I wish you all the very best with that and with all of your adventures for the rest of 2017. I hope we can connect again in the future. And thank you again for your time and sharing of your experiences on Escape the Rat Race Radio.
Thanks, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Wow, what an absolute pleasure that was to have some time there with Leon Logothetis. And Leon is clearly not driven by the material things in life. Leon's message is of success about really connecting to your true self. And Leon told us that for him, the word entrepreneur makes him think that money is the most important thing. It's fascinating. What does the word success mean to you? Do you strive to have £1 million, £100,000? Is it the finance side that defines success for you? Or is it just being comfortable? Or is it the ability to be able to give back, to actually do good in the world and to leave a legacy behind? Leon shared with us about remembering what it was like to be a child and what were the things that you used to spend your time doing other than maybe playing computer games and running around in the garden. But did you have some passions growing up, things that you really actually felt in flow when you were doing them? They came very naturally to you. And then as life gets in the way, and then we forget about these things. And sometimes just actually taking some time to rekindle those passions and start exploring them again actually could be the route towards living a more fulfilled life. If you haven't watched the Kindness Diaries on Netflix, then I really hope that this interview has inspired you to go and check out that fantastic series and explore Leon's journey across the world with nothing but his trusty motorbike, Kindness One, and relying 100% on the kindness of others to provide shelter, food, and gas to get him across the globe. It's been a wonderful, wonderful episode. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And I look forward to seeing you on the other side of Escape the Rat Race Radio. See ya.